Welcome to Garden Views. Interesting conversations with interesting people who have done and or are doing interesting things. So sit back and enjoy. Welcome everyone into Garden Views, and this episode we're welcoming in Marlene Sharp. She's done a whole lot of things and is doing a whole lot of things. She's not done yet. She is a producer, creator, a writer, and we're going to have some fun talking about some intellectual property and the entertainment business. And for those of you who want to know, yes, we're going to be talking about some Sonic the Hedgehog's involved, and Chippendales, the Rescue Rangers, not Chippendales, the dancers, and the rumors about me ever being a Chippendale dancer, they're largely exaggerated. So Marlene, thank you so much for joining us. How are you today?
Oh, I'm very, very good. Thank you. How are you?
I am great, thank you. I really appreciate you doing the show. I want to do a shout out to podcastguests.com. They don't ask for it, but it's been sort of like a little treasure trove, and as of yet, there's been no catch. And since everything has a catch, and this doesn't, I feel like until there is one, I want to mention that there is none, and how happy I am about that. And then, one day we'll see if the shoe drops. But anyway, so tell us a little bit about yourself, like your background, your origin story.
Yeah, so I am originally from New Orleans, Louisiana, but I live in Los Angeles, which when I was in Louisiana, we'd call this the other LA.
Sure.
The abbreviation. And also because New Orleans has really increased as a filming location town since I lived there. When I lived there, there was some location filming, but it's really grown a great deal in the last couple of decades for sure. And but my original goal was to come to Hollywood and be an Oscar-winning actress by this point in time. Actually, I'm way off schedule, I gotta tell you. So I've had to reinvent myself through the years, but I have continued to do some performance. I mean, this is a performance right here, wouldn't you say?
So far, yeah, excellent.
Yeah. And but the way that I make my living is working behind the scenes, and I've done a lot of different jobs, including, like you said, producer, writer, creator, creative executive is another one, and I've worked in various capacities as an assistant, including I worked for about 2 years at Disney as an assistant in their business and legal affairs division for ABC Cable Networks group. So that was an excellent education for me for all the different jobs that I've done, because intellectual property law is just integral and it's so entwined with show business, and it's often overlooked, especially by indie filmmakers, music licensing and so forth. And a big chunk of my career has been working for companies that are located overseas, but then want to have a presence in Los Angeles, in Hollywood. And in some cases, I personally have been the LA office, and then in other cases, I'll be part of a small team with a home office, Japan, Korea, Jordan, someplace else. And it's really interesting to observe the intellectual property laws, or lack thereof, in other countries, and then to try to explain it to folks where it's not second nature. That's an interesting challenge that I've encountered many times through the years. So I'd love to talk about it. So I'm delighted to be on your show.
Yeah, I would echo that. It feels like a big unnecessary expense to a lot of acts or talents when they're on their way up. But what they don't know is by the time they've gotten big enough that it matters, they've probably already signed away some or all of the rights to somebody else at that point, and you never really get a chance to get that back unless you become big enough that you can negotiate it, like a U2 or something like that. Otherwise you're stuck. And, indie musicians, indie wrestlers, actors when they're young. I mean, just even like owning your own stage name. It's just so important. I have a trademark on my main podcast, Garden of Doom. Do I think it's ever going to get to the Joe Rogan levels? No, but if it does, I've got my trademark there. And I try and preach it, and again, it feels like a lot of money to people, but if they make it big, they have to bank on their success. It really isn't all that. It's not that expensive an investment. Especially with the dividends it could yield. So it's good to hear that from an outside source, because I preach it all the time, and I feel like sometimes I'm in a cave and there's no one else in there.
I'm in that cave too, and you would be surprised at how many big companies are very loosey goosey about stuff like that. All kinds of things, and then when a movie is about to come out or a TV show, and the word gets out, something's about to become public, and then another entity finds out that their copyright is being violated, not validated. Right. That's when the panic really starts. If someone's suddenly threatening to put an injunction on the goings on, and I had an experience working on a movie called Postman Pat, the movie, which Postman Pat's a very beloved, iconic British franchise. I was the director of development at a company called RGH Entertainment, and I was very involved in securing the intellectual property. So it was pre-existing, so our team here in Los Angeles, and then the home office in Jordan, that was the home office of the company I was working for, we secured the rights from Classic Media that then became Dreamworks during the course of our making the movie. But unfortunately, the Postman Pat theme song was not licensed during production, and that caused quite a problem when we wanted to put it in last minute into the movie, and it ended up being a huge expense, and right. Because we needed to have it, and somehow it slipped through the cracks, and word got out that we were scrambling, so we had to pay the huge fee, and it's a jolly little kids song, which it was the theme song of this children's preschool TV show for years and years. It would be like telling somebody like the Mr. Rogers theme song cost hundreds of thousands of dollars right. to license, and it became a crisis at the last minute. So
right. If you did the SpongeBob movie without the SpongeBob theme song, it just wouldn't feel the same.
Yeah, and so many shows are like that. Even if you just want to play a few notes of it, it's just and it always makes me laugh when you hear somebody who wants to use or borrow somebody's intellectual property, and they'll say like, oh well, it's just one bar, or it's just this character singing it, or it's just playing on somebody's radio in the background. It doesn't matter.
Right. Especially when you're on a production deadline and you need to get it out by whatever. Even if their case, even if de minimis would be a successful defense, you don't have 7 years to litigate that and go through appeals. It's much easier just to pay, $50,000 or whatever the licensing fee might be to get the song, than go through all of that. So yeah, so you were at Disney, and then Well, yeah, I guess we hadn't gone much further than that, though. You said you worked for a company in Jordan as well, which clearly isn't Disney.
Yeah, not Disney, no. Right.
Unless there's some secret, unless we're breaking some news here.
No, well, it was Dreamworks adjacent, because what happened when we licensed the rights to Postman Pat, we got those rights from, we were actually co-producing with Classic Media, which was a company that had a whole catalog full of heritage titles, and as it turned out, Postman Pat really spoke to the head of the company, RGH Entertainment, which was headquartered in Amman, Jordan. Apparently, parents and families raise their kids on Postman Pat and Jordan too, and so our CEO was delighted that it was available, and they had already developed a movie to a certain point, and they were willing to share their early development with us. I was the director of development at RGH, which meant I would seek out intellectual properties that we could turn into movies and TV series, and then also work with writers and producers and directors to get it ready for main production. And most of what we did was in animation. So there are three distinct parts of animation. There's pre-production, which is all the design work, and then main production, which mostly happens overseas. And then overseas meaning at usually a Chinese studio, an Indian studio, sometimes a Korean studio, and then, or sometimes in Canada, and then post-production, which actually includes voice recording, but voice recording takes place at the beginning of the process, even though it's technically part of post.
Right.
And anyway, so our CEO at RGH was so excited about Postman Pat, and then we just read in the trades one day that Classic Media was bought by Dreamworks. That's how we found out.
Right. And
we were all in a panic because we thought, yikes, we're not making a Dreamworks movie. Ours is very much lower budget
right.
than the standard Dreamworks movie. So our movie, it went over budget. It was about $14-15 million in the end, but a typical Dreamworks animated movie is hundreds of millions of dollars.
Right.
So luckily, Dreamworks, they audited everything that we were doing, and they approved it, and we were allowed to continue with minimal interference or interruption. So that was good, but we did have a few hiccups due to a few unforeseen events. But actually, I got into the business originally of kids and family entertainment and animation prior to working at Disney. I worked at a company called Renaissance Atlantic Films in Los Angeles, and that company was headed by the former president of Bandai America. And Bandai is a toy company that up until a couple of years ago had the toy rights to Power Rangers.
Oh, cool.
So that's how they became a big force in the toy and entertainment industry. And together with another Japanese company called Toei, they grew Power Rangers to a franchise that eventually was exported worldwide.
Right.
And my old boss, Frank Ward, was instrumental in that export outside of Japan. And so then he retired from Bandai. He had a consulting company, and I went to work for his consulting company as my first official job in Hollywood. And so that was my entree into kids and family, anime, merchandise-driven properties, all the things that I still do today. So
I have a question. I don't know if you're the right person to ask about, but you're the person in front of me, and you sound like you would at least know this. It always drives me crazy when there's an animated movie, and especially like a product that, property that has an audience already. And even to live action. So, this like the Avengers, and you'll see where I'm going with this, but also more of your cartoonish or CGI Pixar. And they hire a high-ticket, high-priced actor as the voice actor, and we're never going to see him. And it's like, why are you spending $20 million on Tim Allen and Tom Hanks? And why are you hiring Vin Diesel to say, I am Groot, or Bradley Cooper to be, the raccoon? I sort of get Seinfeld for the B movie, because that's not a property. You need to brand around something, and something to get parents in as well. But, other things, not so much. I mean, especially with the Avengers, it's going to make $1 billion whether Vin Diesel's doing it. So I'm just wondering what the thinking is. Like, your movie's not going to stand or fall on who your voice actor is generally.
Yes.
Whoever has said, to infinity and beyond, it probably doesn't matter to anyone outside their bank book. So what is the thinking with the studio? Just like we need a big star, to do promotion, to go on
Yes.
Letterman?
Essentially, it's a marketing move. And it's hard to articulate. And I guess various people would have various opinions on it. But in my view, it's more important for smaller entities and unknown producers and production companies to have big names attached to their properties, because they're unproven commodities, and they need that halo effect of the star to make it desirable. Like people, for instance, people will go see a Disney movie just because it's Disney Pixar's next movie.
Right.
That's a given. But like when I worked for RGH Entertainment, no one's ever heard of RGH Entertainment. So who's going to go see that movie? And more important, maybe people would go see it. But the important thing to remember is that the gatekeepers believe these things. And there's a lot of old school thinking in movie distribution, movie marketing, just the movie business, for all the groundbreaking technology and whatever. In the toy business, I find this, and also in like the movie studio system, there's everyone's very risk averse, and that's why you see a lot of reboots and sequels and so forth. And so even I think it's for many big studios, it's the rationale is that, well, we're going to hedge our bets with a big name talent, and rather than that's a lesser risk than have no name talent. And I guess various executives debate things behind the scenes, but if a company has already apportioned the resources for A-list talent, then I guess they're going to go for it if they have those resources available to them. But yeah, in my opinion, it's like the smaller companies that really can't afford it, they are the ones who really need it.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I get it about the promotion, and like if you're doing Moana, whatever the movie's called, you want Dwayne Johnson to be on all of the shows, and it's going to get promotion, even if you don't go on the talk shows and things like that. The papers are going to cover it. Your local news is going to cover it. Everyone, everyone's going to. So it's sort of like part of the promotion, publicity. But at the same time, if you're an established studio making a movie and you think the movie's going to stand and fall without the name, but I mean, you've already answered. Maybe I'll just never get it. I especially don't get it though in terms of the MCU, which was well established before you got around to deciding to hire a Bradley Cooper and a Vin Diesel. Nothing against either of them. It's just, I just don't know why you couldn't hire me to say I am Groot, at the minimum SAG rates,
Oh, look, if I put my actor cap on, it's even more infuriating because it's so hard to break into the business as an actor. It's catch-22 because there are only certain roles, and especially for women, there are far fewer roles for women. And then if all the substantial roles are cast by young, good-looking, leading lady types, and who are like, they're if you're young and beautiful, that's one category that is there seems to always be in vogue. So if you're young and beautiful and unknown, you still probably will find opportunities. But if you're young and a character actor, probably the roles that you could be right for, and like even playing a little older, those will go to name actresses.
Right.
And then it just becomes really hard to break in. And if you're not a star, how do you get to increase your worth as an actor? It's very difficult. So
sure.
But that's the business that we're in. There are a lot of frustrating things about it, but by golly, it doesn't discourage people, because there are a ton of people who live in this town who are pursuing this as a career choice.
Yeah, and I've had several on the show, and I know some other people that work in the entertainment industry, and some have made it to the heights. A couple of people of executive producers, and one maybe sort of lucked out because of childhood friends and the entourage that the show went on to, in the movie.
Oh, yeah.
And then another friend who I mean, when I say friend, I'm talking about childhood friends. We're not actively in touch. That is a writer and a writer, and I think a producer now is working on Perry Mason. I know they did the Nick or the Knack, whatever that show was, with Clive Owen, I think.
Wow.
My friend Mark Hammer is a producer, but I know other people who, and he's been on a few of my shows, because for a while we were doing reviews of Land of the Lost, and he was part of that crew.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, we never got through it all because it was very hard to assemble 4 people to do podcasts. But
Mark Hammer is his name?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm writing this down because, this is a business of relationships. Mm-hmm. So I'm counting on you, Jeff, for some good networking outside recording today.
Yeah. Well, Mark knows him. He's still friend now. Mark Hammer with the C, not the K. There's a guy who wrote a movie, the recent one with, I forgot, the guy who played Tad Hamilton, Josh Decent. Anyway, that's a different Mark Hammer.
Okay.
My friend, he worked on Peripheral. He worked on Young Rock. He worked on a little bit of The Devil All the Time, that movie on Netflix. He's worked on Magnum PI, the Scorpio, a ton of movies. Great. Spy Games a while ago, a bunch of Tarantino movies, a whole bunch of Heat, all sorts of stuff. So, and then, but I also know a couple of people who are writers who get some jobs here or there, and some are waiting to hear and whatnot. And, I'm sure it's, listen, everybody who's watched enough media, there's always media about people trying to break into the business, having a hard time about it. So, but yeah, I'm good for a couple of things, but I have a bunch of questions, but I still want to go through sort of your story. So let's take us to the next step.
Okay, so let's see. So I worked for Renaissance Atlantic Films. So that was Power Rangers, and that whole all the Saban Entertainment was a big force in the U.S. in taking these Japanese intellectual properties, and Saban had the media rights, and then Bandai America had the toy rights. So Haim Saban, the head of Saban Entertainment, and my old boss Frank Ward, who was the head of Bandai US, they were the ones who really popularized this set of IPs that Bandai and Toei controlled, and so that was a good and profitable ride for them for many years. And so I worked for Frank for 5 years on Digimon, Power Rangers, Beetleborgs, and all kinds of shows. And then I went to Disney for a couple of years, working in as an assistant in business and legal affairs, which I was thinking at the time that maybe I'd want to go to law school. So I thought that was an opportunity that presented itself to me when Frank closed down his business and I didn't have a job. Right. And I was offered this position at Disney. And I thought, this would be a great way to explore a law career, because I did have a lot of interaction with Disney's business and legal affairs when I was at Renaissance Atlantic, because Disney bought the Saban Fox catalog. And so the last few months I was there, it was just all this transition of the catalog. So went to Disney, did not really like it in working in production. I was in production legal for Disney Channel and what became Freeform, and I did make a lot of good friends there and contacts and so forth, but ultimately I was behind the scenes. I was applying for jobs elsewhere like crazy, and I ended up getting a job with a Korean studio. Well,
let's start with Disney without too much garbage or dirt or anything. Was it just like it was too corporate, too business-like, or was there not enough opportunity for advancement? I mean, you'd think that from the outside looking in, you go, you got a job with Disney and you're going to law school and you're staying there, but from the inside it might be something different. So
yeah, well, so I guess it's a number of things. I really like the creative aspect of the business and wasn't ready to give it up. Mm-hmm. So Renaissance Atlantic, I had stepped into a director of development role because I started out there as an assistant, and then the director of development had left while I was there, and so then I inherited a lot of her job. So I felt like I was moving up in the world, and then to get the job at Disney was really a step back, right, okay, because I was an assistant, and really the only way that I would have moved up in Disney business and legal affairs would have been to go to law school and get that entertainment law degree, and then that would have given me mobility in that division, but not necessarily in other divisions at Disney. And so while I was there, I did pursue transferring to another department, like doing more development. I like development a lot. All the steps that go into preparing something to shoot or to animate. But it was really difficult. I met with some HR people, and they were like, well, the development jobs are few and far between, and if you do get a job in one of those other divisions, you're going to take a huge pay cut because the legal assistants get paid the most. And I was thinking, like, wow, they do? I didn't feel like I was making huge amounts of money, but I guess because the development jobs are so much in demand, they can pay less. Right. And so, but still, I pursued that, and I did not get very far at all, because I was just put in a pool of candidates with everybody else. It wasn't like I got any special consideration being a Disney employee. I was just one of thousands of other people applying for these Disney assistant in development roles. So that's why I started applying elsewhere, because I thought the only chance for me to move up, I knew pretty early on that I didn't want to go to law school. Okay. First of all, I have an MFA in musical theater, and I don't like school very much. And so I was thinking, like, this is going to have to be a fabulous experience to really make me want to go back to school, right, in anything. And then and it wasn't that, so I didn't. And so then I started looking elsewhere, and I was still acting at the time. Right. So I've always had this secret James Bond-like existence, this stealth existence of sneaking off and auditioning for stuff, and getting cast and stuff. You're not drinking martinis and garroting people? What's that? Not drinking martinis and garroting people? Oh, no. Oh. No, it's not that kind of James Bond. The James Bond in my mind is like sneaking around, cloak and dagger. Stealth mode. I have to let my friend's dog out, watch them dog sitting for 3 days, and while you're going. Yeah. Yeah, so kind of like that. It's a James Bond light. Right. So it's more like sneaky kid trying to, right, my crown is loose. The dentist said they can fit me in, so that's why I have to leave today at 2:30, but I'll be back by 4:30. Exactly. In fact, I have right here, well, I know you're not recording, but I found this recently, this artifact from my Disney days. On my old Disney stationery, you can see it says the Disney University Notes. Yep. And one day when I was at my desk, I brainstormed tons of excuses that I could use to get out of work for auditions. And you put it down on paper. That's mistake number one. Well, yeah, I know. I'm not saying that I was good at my stealth mode. I just did it. Right. Okay. I might have been the world's worst at it, but fair enough. So that was always in the back of my mind, like, which is riskier? Which do I want to do more? I don't know. I probably made all the wrong decisions. Well, law school is a big commitment, especially when it's night school. As a way of life. Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to do everything. And then, I mean, if you're doing law school at night and working there, you don't have any flexibility in your schedule. You can't make up the day work at night because you're busy. You've got to study. It's a 4 or 5 year, commitment. So, of course. Yeah. So, yeah, if you were trying to cast a wide net, that's going to limit the amount of fishing you can do. So anyway, we'll get away from my metaphor on that. So, okay. So stuck with Disney, applied to other places, and found your way to? Korean studio called NMS. So actually, all my coworkers were outside of LA. Mm-hmm. I was the LA office. I was also the only native English speaker in the company, and so pretty much everything that required a native English speaker fell on my shoulders. So I was the accounting department, business and legal affairs. I was creative. I did a lot of voices for things that we needed. English. We recorded a lot in Korea, but ultimately this company wanted to be a global content provider, not a Korean content provider. So sure. At a certain point, things needed to be voiced in English. So then I was casting, I was voice directing, I was pitching, I was doing all these things. So I worked for the Korean studio for 5 years, and then after 5 years, the Korean company decided to cease doing business in the U.S., and that was the end of my job. So I started my own company with 2 partners called Two Twigs and a Berry Productions, and we did some stuff for a couple of years. We did a lot of contract work. We did some animation for the writer-producer who adapted the book Hidden Figures. So Ted Melfi, we did something for him, and various other things. We created an original project that we sold to an Israeli company, and then it was very hard. It was a very hard to sustain business model, though. Even though we had some successes, it was just difficult. And so I had an offer to go work for this Jordanian company after a couple of years. So I did that, and the Jordanian company was called RGH Entertainment, and there was an LA office really near to where I lived, a small team, and the headquarters was in Amman, Jordan, and that's what I did after that. And then after RGH, I went to Sega. Then after Sega, I went to Level 5, which is Level 5 is very much like Sega, except their Sonic is Jibanyan from Yokai Watch. So that's their marquee franchise is Yokai Watch.
Oh, okay. Let's go back to Sega a little bit, because Sega, I mean, that's huge. Everyone knows Sega. Even if it's not the biggest company that you worked at a top role, it might be the biggest one that people have heard of anyway. And I understand that you worked on Sonic the Hedgehog.
I did. Sonic was my boss.
Is he a good boss? And
sometimes.
Is it a he? Is Sonic a he? I don't know.
He is, okay. Yes.
All right. So Sonic has a gender. That's exciting. So tell us about a little bit about Sonic. I mean, a few years ago, I know everyone was excited. They made a movie. I know that the initial reveals of the artwork or the graphics for Sonic was met with universal disapproval, and then it was redone to much rejoicing and good enough that it's the franchise, it's turned into like a movie franchise as well. So were you there during that little new Coke snafu?
Yes, and actually I think it turned out to be a pretty shrewd PR move, unintended for sure.
Right.
But I think that whole moment in Sonic history really was fantastic in a number of ways, because it was turned into a situation where the fans felt heard. Mm-hmm. That and the Sonic fans are very outspoken. And I sat next to our community manager for a year and watched him deal with fans all day, every day. And wow, he would get a lot of abuse heaped on him. and anytime anything would happen with a game or merchandise, or I don't know, even things that would like the fandom would fight amongst themselves.
Sure.
And then he would hear, it was almost like he was the mediator of the whole kingdom. And but one thing that seemed to be true across the board is that the fans wanted to be heard. So when I was there, we worked on a game called Sonic Mania, which was the first time I'm pretty sure it was the first time that Sega had put together an all-fan team of game developers and really solicited ideas from the community, and then put it all together. Actually, hired people who were already making fan games and putting them out there for free for fans to play. They were assembled. Some of them were brought to Los Angeles. Mind you, it was a very grueling process. And I was only peripherally involved in Sonic Mania, but that turned out to be one of the most successful experiments that preceded the Sonic movie. But the Sonic movie development was actually 10 plus years in the making. So a lot of people worked on that movie a lot of people who didn't get credit, myself included.
Aww.
So that's why I always like to give myself credit when I go on these podcasts, because it certainly didn't come on the screen, which is unfortunate, but that's just part of the business.
Well, it's a household name even to an old fart like me.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, Sonic is, let's see, 32 years old, I think. 32, 33. I mean,
that tracks with my memory. But, even if you're too old for it, you have kids or grandkids who, probably played Sonic or have friends that have worn that shirt or whatever the case might be.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. There are a lot of entry points into Sonic. Some people know it from the cartoons because there have been so many through the years, TV series anyway. And so I was originally brought on to produce the second season of Sonic Boom, which was a Cartoon Network series, a CGI series. And but what happened was Sega had offices in the Bay Area for their U.S. operations were in the Bay Area for 30-something years. And then in 2015, Sega Japan, the headquarters, decided that it was too expensive to operate out of San Francisco anymore. So they laid everybody off, or just about everybody from the Bay Area, and started all over again in Los Angeles. And I believe that part of the rationale for that was the movie was looking more likely at that point. It had only been in development for 5 years at that point, but it was looking more positive that it was actually going to happen. So it seemed to make sense to have people who worked for Sega closer to where the movie people were there, working and so forth. And then, believe it or not, it was less expensive to do business in Los Angeles than San Francisco. And we were a small but mighty team of 14 people to start out with, taking over from 100 plus people in the Bay Area. So I wore many hats. That's also been a common denominator in my career, is that I wear a lot of hats, especially working for smallish offices. Like if you're the only employee in that office, or if you're one of a small team, you tend to get a lot of chances to do different things. So that's what happened. I was following the production that was already in place for season 2 of Sonic Boom. But then it was also 2016 was the year that Sonic turned 25. And so the expectation from Japan was that we would, in the US, have a whole year's worth of fantastic activities to celebrate Sonic. And we pretty much had no budget, and there were no plans. And we all started working at the same time in the middle of 2015. So it was a mad scramble, and everybody had to do a lot of different things.
You mentioned over the course of the conversation that you've worked on, I believe, TV shows, video games, and movies. Are there any major differences between working on those 3 different types of properties, or is it all sort of the same, just a different platform?
I would say games are different from movies and TV in the sense that there's that interactive component, and the games are usually things that are going to be sold directly to the consumer, whereas movies and TV are, whether people want to admit it or not, they're part of the marketing. So especially for kids properties. Like, it's not necessarily true for something like Seinfeld, let's say. In the beginning of Seinfeld, there wasn't a toy company pulling the strings behind the scenes. Like,
Right.
how are we going to sell the Seinfeld action figure and the play sets and this, that, and the other? So with grown-up entertainment, like the merch, the consumer products usually comes
Later.
after something's become successful, usually like wildly successful, and there's just a nostalgic demand for it.
Right.
Whereas with kids stuff, most of the time, that's part of the plan from the beginning. That's why Hasbro and Mattel are major forces in the entertainment business, because they are actively developing stuff, movies and TV shows, for their catalog of intellectual properties. So I know fans tend to complain about all the reboots and sequels and so forth, and I know it's frustrating. It's frustrating for people who want to break into the business with something new, and sometimes it's frustrating just your choices of what to consume. It seems like a rehash of a lot of things, but these companies take a lot of time and money to develop these intellectual properties to a certain point, and that's how they can justify putting money into the franchises, because it's like putting money in a savings account, or buying an annuity or something like that. It's something that'll pay dividends in the end. And the screen content is really meant to drive consumer behavior. It's not necessarily meant to bring money in itself. For instance, Sonic Boom, that was a huge loss for Sega, and they could only really sustain it for 2 years because the games and the merchandise were not selling, and so at a certain point they had to just cut their losses. But if not too many people were watching the TV show, but it was selling gangbusters volumes of games and figures, and themed entertainment destinations were popping up or whatever, you can believe that show would have continued on for a long time as a marketing tool.
Right. If you're making the movie Seven, you're not planning on a lot of merchandise. But if you're making the movie, well, we'll just use Sonic. You're assuming that there's going to be a video game, maybe multiple video games. You're assuming, merchandise, shirts, clothes, lunchboxes, Lego, action figures, collectibles, Funkos, whatever. All of those things are going to be part of it. So even if the movie doesn't do so well, the merchandise might carry it to sequel city anyway.
It must. The merchandise must, because there's not money for that. So, like, for instance, with Sonic Boom, it was on a number of different channels all over the world, but we'd only get like maybe a few $100s per episode licensing fee in some countries, and in the US, where this was, some people would argue this is the most lucrative market. We only got a couple of $1,000s for our licensing fee on Cartoon Network, and the show cost several $100,000 to make. So there's very much of a shortfall. So if we're not, even with the show being on in 100 plus countries or territories, it still was not enough to break even.
Right.
So it's kind of like, if you think about making commercials, if somebody's going to make a very expensive Super Bowl commercial, that is a sunk cost. I mean, it's going to have a shelf life a few weeks or months around the time of the Super Bowl, but a company will put forth that expense because they feel like it's a worthy roll of the dice. And it's kind of like that with creating content around these game or toy characters, and at least there's a chance that those things will live on.
Right.
And they'll have some return on investment. In the best case scenario, the content will make a lot of money on its own, but really that's meant to be like an investment. And sometimes those things require their own advertising too. It's an advertising expense that requires advertising for people to know that it's there. It's just an expensive business, and that's why when a company happens upon a big hit, they want to preserve it, and really, it represents a lot of years of hard work and a lot of people's contributions and so forth. So
right.
They want to keep it going.
So Sony will desperately hang on to the Spider-Man B, C, and D characters for all of that. Those other things, even if Mobius is a gigantic flop, not once but twice, they still think that they can sell shirts and merch, or at least incorporate Mobius into future things with, I don't know, Venom and the Vulture and, Spider-Man, whatnot. But so that's really interesting because, I'm trying to think of a flop and probably things the flops I forgot about because I'm not a kid. But I think that within the last 20 years, they tried to do Casper the Friendly Ghost, which when I was a kid was a cartoon. I don't think it did very well. But but if you get hit one Lightning McQueen in Cars, that pays for, 6 flops or something like that. Mm-hmm. Or Frozen, which sort of came out of nowhere. And then now it's legendary. But let's talk about what I know that is near and dear to your heart, and of course is near and dear to mine, and that's the intellectual property and specifically the licensing. So basically, I guess from a high view, what are the different types of intellectual property that you've been involved with, and what are the different types of sales and licensing arrangements?
Oh golly, so many things: books, music, toys.
What are the typical arrangements for, if you're selling toys, are you selling the rights to, say, Mattel or Hasbro, or are you licensing and you get a royalty? What's the royalty percentage to, a Sega from a Mattel? Is it 10%? Is it 1.5%? Is it 20%? Is it nothing like that at all?
The answer is anything goes. There are no rules, and there are there are case studies, mm-hmm. but there's not a rule book saying this is how much this costs, or there's not even a standard deal template or anything like that. It's literally
everything's negotiated.
I'm sorry?
It's everything is negotiated case by case. It's literally like that.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, everything is negotiated because sometimes the intellectual property will be part of Mattel's catalog. Mattel owns a lot of IPs. Barbie, for instance, Hot Wheels, all kinds of things. And so sometimes Barbie will want to do a movie or a TV show based on what they have planned for the brand with regard to sales, but they might not have somebody wanting to. They might not have, Mattel might not have all the money that they need to produce such a thing, so they'll have to go to third parties for partnership, financing, collabs, whatever.
So it's the reverse. The studio is licensing the right to do it, and
exactly.
and they're maybe getting. I'm making this up. They'll get 70% of the revenue, and 30% is going to Mattel. I'm making up the split because apparently there's no standard. I mean, I know that in music, that if you're a cover band or you're a regular venue or you're a bar and you want to play music, you can pay BMI or the Harry Fox agency sort of set amounts of money for a year. But in a movie or TV show or a video game, that's different, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it depends on if you, and also it's hard to look at something on a screen and say, oh, that was this kind of a licensing deal. You don't really ever know. Sometimes a property owner will give something. Well, for the case of Power Rangers. So Power Rangers outside of Japan, my old boss Frank used to say, we couldn't give this stuff away. For 7 years, they were pitching it to various networks in Hollywood, hoping that somebody would give a license fee for the episodes that were in Japanese, but then were tweaked for American or Western audiences, mm-hmm. and tweaked meaning dubbed, edited, localized, or whatever. And nobody wanted to put forth any money for that. And so at a certain point, Haim Saban and my old boss Frank were given permission by Bandai Japan and Toei to give it away. They gave it to Fox Kids Network, and they said, "Here, you don't have to pay us any license fee at all. we feel so confident that the toys will sell outside of Japan. We're doing this as an experiment to see what will happen. And so they gave those rights away to the Fox Kids Network, and to this day they're still selling boatloads of toys. There is no more Fox Kids Network, but that was a case of giving something away, essentially pay to play, and that happens too. A lot of consumer products companies will essentially buy advertising time on a kids network, in addition to taking like a small, they call it there's an imputed licensing fee. So it's really just, you get like a little discount off of the ad spend that you're supposed to be making. I know this is all really getting into the weeds, but if it's a third party company like Lego or Mattel or MGA Entertainment, Hasbro, and they have a show that they want to see on Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network or what have you, it's not uncommon for it to be some kind of pay-to-play deal where they really need that show to be on TV, or a movie to be in theaters or what have you. And it's not like, even though the network is getting an opportunity to have some quality programming, they're not paying for it in the way that you might think. It's not really a licensing deal. So
it's being subsidized by the toy manufacturer, where the toy manufacturer is getting a lower advertising rate. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, but not necessarily even a lower advertising rate. It just depends on how much in demand the property is. Like if let's say Lego goes to Cartoon Network with a Star Wars Lego special, that's something that people want to see. So the Lego, I guess, because they produce those specials, the Star Wars Legos. Well, that would be like a joint venture between Lucas, I guess, Lucas, Disney, and Lego. And if they would go to a network like Cartoon Network, and they would say, "Hey, we've got this. What could we do to get this on your air?" There's a negotiation that happens based on the value of the intellectual property, the demand. With Star Wars, that's going to be a different deal than like if you were taking like Casper the Friendly Ghost out of the archives and saying, "Hey, we've got Casper the Friendly Ghost." Well, it's right. Debatable how much
Star Wars up here, Casper down there.
Yes. So people who have an intellectual property that is in demand, they have a great deal of leverage, and so there might be more money for them. I guarantee you, there's more money for Star Wars than there is for Friendly Ghosts right now.
Let me show my age a little bit here and ask you, and I don't know if you'll know the answer to this or not, but I think in the same year, Shrek 3 came out, and The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, the English version, came out. Mm-hmm. And the only reason I bring this up is because in Shrek 3, when Snow White got all the animals to invade the castle, they had Led Zeppelin's The Immigrant Song playing. And in The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, either the theme song In or Out or both was the Immigrant Song, same song, but Trent Reznor's version. Oh. And I'm just wondering if there's some difference in how that's treated from the studio perspective. I mean, do they just buy is one just licensing the Zeppelin version? Is another one you're licensing the Zeppelin version, but then you have to pay more because Trent Reznor's going to do a cover, or is just you're hiring Trent Reznor to do his cover?
Yes, it's all very nuanced. You can license like the original performance, and that's one price, or you can license the right to perform, and then that's a different set of rights. And I think the cost behind each one depends on what is more in demand. Like if it's Judy Garland singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow, it will command a much higher price than Marlene Sharp singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow. So but then again, if it was some unknown person, it just depends. Right. And like sometimes like think of the instance of like Dolly Parton doing "I Will Always Love You." I mean, that was her song. She wrote it, she performed it. It did modestly well, but then when Whitney Houston sang it in The Bodyguard, that was a whole new level of awareness and whatever.
Sure.
And so I would say that Whitney Houston's version is probably the definitive version now. So if you wanted to license Whitney Houston singing that, it's going to cost you a lot more than Dolly Parton singing it in its original version. So it's all, like I said, a negotiation. But speaking of which, Jeff, I am so sorry, but I need to wrap up because duty calls, and I have another Zoom at 3:30.
Okay, amazing. All right, well, thank you for all of that. I guess tell people where they can find you and if there's anything that you need to promote or anything like that.
Oh, sure. Well, I'm just promoting me, so hire me for all of your entertainment needs, creative, business, and otherwise. And you can find me at pinkpoodleproductions.com. And I'm also a maniac on LinkedIn. So please link with me and good times will ensue.
All right. Thank you very much for your time and your expertise. If you ever want to come back, we'll chat again and talk then. All right, very good.
The sequel.
The sequel. Yeah, exactly. The sequel. I'm going to merchandise the hell out of this. All right. Well, thank you. Good luck on your next Zoom call. And thanks for joining us here on Garden Views.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. I hope to see you again soon.
Excellent.
Bye-bye.
These are the eyes that never knew how to smile till you came into my life. And these are the arms that long to lock you inside every day and every night. Girl, and here is the soul of which you've taken control. Can't you see I'm trying to show love is right? Oh, show and tell, just a game I play when I wanna say I love you, girl. So show me and tell me that you feel the same way too. Say it do, baby. These are the hands that can't help reaching for you if you're anywhere inside. And these are the lips that can't help calling your name in the middle of the night.